Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities. All right, we are live. We are at Just Energy Radio. I'm your sub-host, James Arthur Jancik, the Black Knight of Talk Radio. There we go. Dr. Rita's out on a conference, speaking somewhere, and rather than simply cancel the show or do a rerun, she asked if that I would sit in and do the show. I've done it a few times. You may hear my voice, the opening voice of the intro. Dr. Rita and I go back many years. She has been on my show many times, a regular guest, and I enjoy interviewing her on her works. And so that is why I am here today. And our guest today is Ken Hudnall, UFO, Secret Society, and Ancient Gods. He's a military veteran. Captain Ken Hudnall was an instructor in urban warfare at the United States Army Infantry School and is an author of 40-plus books, including the award-winning Manhattan Conspiracy series. The first in the series was written in 1992, but was a chillingly accurate portrayal of the terrorist attacks on New York in 1993 and 2001. He's appeared on CNN, Fox News, Coast to Coast AM, and other major networks as a special consultant in urban warfare. And I'd like to welcome to the show today Ken Hudnall. And welcome, Ken.
Well, thank you.
Urban warfare. Well, you're going to be bringing out your tools perhaps in the near future as the way things are going at this planet.
Definitely that gave me the chance to really play with all the neat toys that the Army had come up with. And, in fact, we developed at that time some of the tactics still used today.
Well, so, I like your topics here. We'll get into it in a second. But on the subject of urban warfare, I've talked to people in the past about surviving and all that, and it seems like the word urban warfare is almost kind of an oxymoron in that if you are in an urban area and, the power goes out or all hell breaks loose, it's going to be pretty tough to survive.
That's true. You would think it would be the easiest because you got access to so much in the way of resources. The problem is we're used to flipping a switch and having lights come on, and we're used to central air. But when the power's gone, we step back about 100 years, and a lot of people have trouble wrapping their mind around that concept.
Yeah, well, I was taking a shower one day, and I was thinking, what would be the single thing that I would do if I was in power and wanted to, decrease the population or whatever, put everybody in darkness? And I thought of only one thing would be electricity, because no matter what we do, it's all have electricity involved. Some have said that the gas lines, the gas pipes have backups, electric generators that run on gas, and therefore the gas pipes would run even if the electricity goes out because of their own system, but then one can easily disrupt the gas flow as a secondary thing. So what do you think?
True, and also keep in mind, most people today, when you think of gas, you think of, it's always there, like we have a gas stove. And you don't think anything of cutting it on because you get an automatic flame. But without electricity, you don't have a pilot light.
That's true. A lot of the new appliances have the clicking that turn it on.
That's right.
So you have a lighter or something that would go on. And I would imagine some of those would not even allow the gas flow if there wasn't some type of a electricity guaranteeing a pilot light or whatnot. So there might even be some type of a preventing you from even doing it manually.
I was watching we had a power outage, and someone here, just during the winter, and they were cold, and they said, could they cut on the fireplace, which is gas operated? And I said, sure. So they cut it on, and nothing happened. They just looked at it, and I knew the gas was coming out and kind of pooling there because I've seen it happen before. And I said, you're going to need to take a match and light that. So they took a match and they lit it, and flames came from every direction, and they literally had coronary. And I said, you got to think about what you do. You cut that on, gas comes out. If there's no pilot light, gas got to go somewhere. And then when you do light it, it's just a chain reaction.
Right, yeah.
And it, if without electricity, without water on command.
I think in this upcoming times is that the reliance on old tech, people who have remembered to use old tech would have this ability to survive through this stuff, but the new tech would be in trouble.
That's quite true. And also keep in mind, without power, and unless you have really planned ahead, we also don't have communications.
Right. Yeah, some of the communications they have planned have this, battery powered. So then, of course, you have to have the batteries charged. And when you really think through this, unless you really think through it, it would be pretty hard to go through. It would be hard to get through this, no matter how much you try. I know I bought a gas generator that runs on gasoline, and there's a natural gas attachment. But simply to run the gas line to where I have the generator, I would have to change the whole way I have the gas because of the pressure of the gas. And then I find out that the gas generator, it can't run at the same power that the gasoline part is. Oh, it's always something that comes up.
No, of course.
So are you in a urban area yourself now? Are you rural or suburban?
El Paso, Texas.
El Paso. I've been through there a couple of times.
I can stand in my front yard, and if the wind is right, I can hit the border with a rock.
Yeah. So anyway, secret society's UFO. I have a working model, a working little theory that you have the UFOs perhaps were the gods of old, aliens, gods of old. They did their thing, so the UFOs and the ancient gods were all in one. They did their thing for a while, and they either left or were chased away, or a lot of them died, they got bored, whatever the deal is, and that the secret societies are an echo of the original. In other words, the manager class that they used to deal with continued on in the traditions of their handlers, the gods, if you will, and that is what we're dealing with today. I mean, how does that kind of scenario hold up in your how you look at it?
Oh, I think that's very close. The original gods, and if you read the writings in numerous ancient religions, you see a lot of commonalities. I think we're talking about one group of entities. If you look at Sitchin's work, there were not very many of them that came. They came to exploit this planet for resources. And when you got a small group, you get interbreeding, you have mutations. So, and here they had an entire society that worshipped them and they could take advantage of.
And at some point in time, they had to pull back. And they left their children, the demigods, in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And then the demigods, of course, that's why you saw in so many ancient civilizations, you weren't royal unless your parents were brother and sister. You know, keeping that blood pure, so to speak.
Right.
And that's why you found all the royal families were distantly related. And then to protect the secret, you had the secret societies that are supposed. All of them say they're protecting an important secret that's come down through history. And when I wrote that book in 1989, the first edition, I offered $1,000 to anybody who could disprove any of it. Nobody ever could.
And did they in this scenario are the gods or the demagogues still around?
There is evidence to the fact that there is but what I discovered when I did all the research and just I dove into things that absolutely sounded like the ravings of lunatics. And then I discovered that there was a lot of validity to what they said. But in the shadows, so to speak, is a group of entities who pretty much control a lot of what happens. And they operate through various secret societies. And we can see a prime example of that. Jimmy Carter, governor of Georgia, ran for president, didn't have a snowball's chance in hell. Invited to speak at the CFR, and next thing you know, he is the front runner for the nomination and became president. The same with Bill Clinton. Who would have thought the governor of Arkansas had a chance? He's invited to speak at the CFR. He leaves that meeting the front runner for president. The same with Barack Obama. There is a manipulation that goes on, and there are many people who are members of the CFR, but only a few seem to have that controlling influence. And each CFR, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the Roundtable Group, they all are the current manifestations of older secret societies, and you have society upon society going back into the shadows of history.
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine what those secret societies, you have, perhaps more than two, but you have basically two levels. You have the general group, and then you have the inner group. And the inner group knows all the little dirty little secrets, or special little secrets. And the outer group have a general knowledge. Maybe they feel special. They maybe do the grunt work for the group. I think of the Masons in general, and then you have the inner Masons. I would imagine in the CFR and otherwise you may have the inner group, the Bilderberg, the inner group, and you have the outer group who do fit in and do work in some way, but aren't in part of the actual steering, if you will.
Oh, I think you're quite correct. There's, if everybody knows the inner workings, then you have the potential to have what you're doing exposed. But you've got the cannon fodder, as I call them, and then you've got the folks on the inside who call the shots, and they're the ones that decide pretty much what happens. All this is going on in Europe today. If you watch the names and you've read as much as I have, you see indications of the various secret groups, moving about. And they've decided the euro be adjusted. And so they will make the moves to have the system collapse, and it gets rebuilt. And who rebuilds it? The same group. Prime example, at the end of World War I. World War I was basically a family argument between
the royal family of England and the royal family of Russia. It could easily have been settled with, Germany. It could easily have been settled and gone on down the road, but our president decided we didn't need royal families. So the king of Germany was forced to abdicate. What happened? That created a power vacuum, and that led directly to World War II. World War I and World War II made some of the inner families wealthy beyond their wildest dreams. And that was the purpose of it, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, if we can get into some of the more, I don't would be bizarre or secret or fascinating or whatever of this. When you have these ancient gods and they've had the demigod, are there any, literally, physically, of these beings still alive? Are all these rumors of gods returning and whatnot, is this all wishful thinking upon the people who came afterwards? Or is there really, are they underground? Are they still having some say-so in things? Or are they absolutely totally gone, and who's running things now would be these bloodlines?
Well, I think you're seeing what's going on right now, a lot of the bloodlines that have remained in power. Now, the original entities, the entity that was known as Zeus or Thor or Odin, probably have long since gone the way of the dodo. However, it's their bloodlines where the importance is. The Merovingian Dynasty, which is one of the very earliest dynasties of France. That bloodline came from, if you read the material that's out there, that bloodline came from Christ. His wife and children, according to all the writings, were evacuated out of Palestine and brought to southern France, and they gave birth to the Merovingian Dynasty. The last Merovingian king was assassinated by his prime minister, who was of the Capet line, and the Capet was the family name of the French kings until Louis XVI, when he was executed. We're seeing the bloodlines controlling, and there's been movements to put them back on the thrones. There was a move to put the Tsar back in, one of his descendants back on the throne of Russia during the period right after the fall. There's been a move to put the Habsburgs back on the Austrian throne. That's going on right now. There's been a move to put the French royal family back in. Those bloodlines are striving for power. The problem is you don't know who is who. Let one of them get in a position of power. I think you see changes start to take place to basically set the clock back.
That wouldn't be necessarily a good thing, though, right?
No, I don't think it would, because you have to remember, until Louis XVI, I forget what it was called, but basically the power of the royalty of the royal line said that all the non-royals were basically so much property. And if one offended you, you could kill them, and that was fine. With the fall of the French royal family, all that was swept away. But it was you still in some countries see aspects of that. Haile Selassie in Ethiopia, who was one of the ruling royal families, he had the power of life and death over his subjects. That's traditionally been part of royalty down through the ages. Because you have to keep in mind, and a lot of the UFO contactees bring this up, they're told when they ask the aliens that kidnap them, what gives you the right to do this? we have the right. We own you. Krista Tilton out of Texas, who was a contactee, was told by one of them when she said, "Why don't you reveal yourself to the average individual? If we did, you would worship us." And they don't want to be in that position, but they do believe that they have the right to do whatever it is they want to do. That's the same philosophy you've seen from every royal ruling family down through history.
Well, yeah. So what comes from it though is kind of almost anticlimactic in that it's their own little soap opera, but it's not like there's flying spaceships or it sounds just like something I'd see on a History Channel fictionalized history only future. It doesn't sound like there's special technology and beams and
Well, you have to remember, our government doesn't tell us everything. They don't. There's a lot they don't tell us. The Robertson panel in the late 40s, early 50s said, you need to suppress all the information about, advanced beings because it would not be good for society. Because every time an advanced society has come in contact with a less advanced society, the less advanced society has literally fallen apart. And I think there's been a lot more advanced technology found than we've ever been told about.
Now, do you have any examples or any kind of, I use the word in quotations, proof. I mean, I hear a lot of this stuff, but I haven't been really convinced too much.
Well, one of the things that is circumstantial, but it's still proof of sufficient weight that if this was a court case would be admissible under the rules of evidence. We went from, let's just pull a number out of the air, the year 1 to the year 1906, and the most advanced technology in the way of transportation was the horse and buggy. Between 1906 and 2012, we've gone to the moon. We have sent craft to Mars. We have done unbelievable things. Why, in the space of, let's just say, 100 years, have we done all this, and in the preceding 1906, we did very little?
Well, I mean, one would argue that once you reach a certain level, now you can see to another level, and now you can see to another level, and the distance between levels are actually, while if you think about it, from a motor car to landing a ship on Mars does seem like a huge jump, but it's really only a series of technical, mathematical, physical questions. So like you can do, if you don't have a car, you don't have a prayer of going to Mars. You have a car, you have the concept of moving mechanical things in here and so forth and using the physics behind it. You have a grasp of the next level. I guess, we're missing the steam pistons would be probably the first thing, then a car, and so on. Rather than having an external combustion with a steam engine, you now move it internally and so on. So, I mean, that's how I look at it. It's almost like dividing a number in half. At first, takes you these large chunks, and then it gets real small. And that's kind of how I look at it. I'm not saying there isn't special knowledge. It's just that it seems that, to me, reasonably, that would explain it. Things like still using oil seem to go counterproductive in this argument because it's like that's a very old way to do it. You would think that by now you would have some type of other advancement in physics to be able to do that, but we haven't reached that next level.
Well, actually, we do, but it was immediately taken off the market. The Germans, during World War II, when they couldn't get access to oil, they developed synthetic oil that worked 100 times better than crude oil. At the end of the war, we backed several trucks up to the patent office, which was the German post office, and took every patent, and they haven't been seen since. A lot of very advanced technology was being utilized by the Germans. Many stories talk about the fact that they found on Spitzenberg Island a crashed circular craft, and they reverse engineered a lot of it. The Italians found one, had no clue what to do with it, and gave it to the Germans. So they were reverse engineering as fast as they could go. They just couldn't put things into production. But technology, we have reports in history. The best we have in normal commerce look pitiful. But we have to use what is made available to us as opposed to what is actually out there.
Yeah, I've actually looked into things, the Nazi Bell and whatnot, and all the other aspects that the Germans actually created and launched and used a nuclear weapon against Russia.
1943.
Yeah, and actually the little boy, I guess it is actually a German design, and that also.
Well, actually, we didn't have enough uranium to build 3 bombs. The Germans were I had to get rid of that. The Germans were exporting a lot of it to Japan, and we captured that submarine, and it's that uranium that was used for all 3 bombs. The 2 we dropped in Japan, and one of the test ones.
Yeah, well, I guess my point is that, when they say they took all the patents and all that, I mean that's coffee table anecdotal, but I wouldn't, I'm open to anything, but I just don't believe everything or anything. I don't want to believe anything. Actually, I'd like to be taken along and shown. And when it comes to the saying that I've heard is that the United States, or anybody for that matter, any technologically society is like 50 years ahead of what is being publicly released. I mean that sounds nice, but you'd have to.
Well, I've been involved in the creation of weapon systems for the military in my misspent youth, and the best we had in the field was 2 to 3 generations behind what we were testing, and that's simply because when you got, for example, the United States Army, several 100,000 people, and you give them the M16. That's an expensive weapon system. The system is designed to support that weapon system. And let's say tomorrow we develop phasers like on Star Trek. Well, do you want to play a weapon system, the M16, and go to the expense and the trouble of distributing phasers to everybody? What do you do with the hundreds of thousands of M16s you've got in the inventory? You allow them to basically make themselves obsolete, and then you start phasing in the new weapon system, and it may take 1 or 2 generations.
No, I understand that. In fact, there was a movie that came out years ago, Man Who Filled the Earth, with David Bowie, and it kind of showed what you were saying, the opposite of that he kept on coming out with a new technological advance so quickly to try and make money to go back to his home planet, whatever, that the people would just buy something and then it would be obsolete, and there was a riot and et cetera. And I understand about, I guess what I would look into is that the assertion that they made the phaser in the first place.
Tesla had a what he called a death ray, that worked very, very effectively. But he died, and every scrap of paper in his home and laboratory was confiscated by federal agents, and nobody's seen a death ray since.
Right.
He actually was distributing electricity without wires. Well, if we were able to do that, we'd put a whole lot of people out of work.
Yeah, and I I don't know if this is even pertinent to what what the whole topic would be, but on that subject, the distributing the electricity without wires, the way I see it, it was abandoned because you could do that, but it wasn't as controllable and effective because there was as stories of lightning bolts shooting out of the ground. Because he was reversing it. He was sending the energy through the ground, we'll say, rather than through a positive wire, which is grounded. And you don't have the control of where it comes out because it will come out. Electricity travels to the, basically the shortest line, least resistance. And so you really can't control how that energy is used if you use through the ground like he was doing. So, it's true, but it seemed to be not realistically usable and therefore would not be used. And if you talk about the death ray is a far cry from having a little handheld battery device to be able to put huge amounts of energy out. That's what I'm saying. It's like, but in a more realistic application, it seems to be a whole new level of physics would need to be discovered in order to get to that next level.
And that's where they came up with quantum physics during World War II. And some of the things capable of being done through quantum physics boggles the mind.
For example?
Well, for example, utilizing quantum physics, they've actually been able to have some successful teleportation experiments.
Yeah, they've been able to teleport literally a couple of not even the spin of particles have been affected at a distance. And that's true. In fact, they just had a release of where they actually were able to do a couple of particles of information. But that is incredibly far from being any type of effectiveness. It might be the next thing, but it's hugely far away.
But it's incredibly advanced over, I wonder if we could do that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess my original point, not to belabor it, was whether or not there really is the end results already done and used behind the scenes or hiding or whatnot. And, I would tend to believe that there isn't a working model already in the background that's either being used privately or in reserve, that the breakthroughs aren't much farther along than what we are aware of, I guess.
Well, in 1988 or 9, I took a busload of people to Rachel, Nevada, population 6, in order to build the Area 51. And when we were there, folks were showing me photographs of real UFOs, and those photographs were actually early versions of the F-117 that had been flying for over 10 years because Rachel's right on the edge of the test area. So for 10 years, before anybody even thought about a stealth craft, we were flying them. Now, when you get to aircraft, Area 51, if you listen to all the hype, we're reverse engineering, crashed UFOs. Maybe yes, maybe no, but we are flying aircraft far and away more advanced than anything the public's aware of. Yeah,
and I would agree that the items are more advanced. I guess the disagreement I might have with some of the more extreme examples would be the distance between where they think we are at this point and where we are at this point. So yeah, there's no question. There's been, and I've talked with people who were actually working in 51 and Area 51, and they, talked about that's what their whole gig was coming up with advanced aircraft. And
that was originally the Skunk Works.
And they even played jokes on the Russians because they had satellites that would fly over, and they knew the satellites were going to be there, and they would build like plywood, real bizarre design crafts, and they would build these plywood models, and they put them on there, and they cover it with tarp, so that when they photographed it, they would be like, "Oh wow, what's this?" To try and fool them. Incidentally, for those tuning in now, you're not hearing Dr. Rita. I am James Jancik, the host of Feet to Fire Radio, sitting in for Dr. Rita, good friend, and she is out and about at a conference speaking. Oh, hold on. I don't have my phone on mute. I have the Perry Mason theme from my ringer. And we're talking live with Ken Hudnall. His web site is Ken Hudnall. That's HUDNALL.com. And we're talking about UFOs, secret societies, and ancient gods. At this point, if I said where would you like to go in the topic, where would you like to go?
Well, actually, Roswell's coming up, and I'm going to be speaking about my newest book, which is UFOs and the Supernatural. Because the UFO theory, if you will, is they're people from outer space. But in actuality, many times UFO events have had supernatural overtones. UFOs may be spacecraft from Mars, for that matter, but that doesn't mean all of them are. Go ahead.
So where do you think these are coming from? How many are terrestrial? How many are interdimensional? And how many are physically removed somewhere from this planet, whether it be a planet or another galaxy?
Well, when you look at the original theory behind the occult connection, UFOs, secret societies, and ancient gods. The UFOs have been with us since the dawn of early history. There are cave drawings that show circular craft in the sky. There's some cave drawings in Africa. In fact, I wrote about it in my newest book that shows entities from one of these circular craft taking smaller natives on board the craft. In other words, an early UFO abduction.
Hmm?
And if you remember the Doggone tribe, who has a lot of advanced knowledge about the dog star Sirius, and they say it came from entities from one of these circular craft. So clearly, some are visitors from other planets. However, we also have situations, and Skinwalker Ranch in the Southwest is a prime example, where you see a light in the sky that comes down, you assume a UFO landing, and the next thing you know, you're dealing with Sasquatch. There's been a number of cases where entities that look like the descriptions we hear about Sasquatch are seen at UFO landing sites. We've got other instances where people who have seen a UFO suddenly have strange things happening in their homes. They have things that move, that levitate. They hear footsteps. There's no one there. There's a knock at the door and there's no one there. They have poltergeist activity. And people want to poo-poo that because, after all, if these are spaceships from another planet. Well, maybe not all of them are. If it's unidentified by its very definition, we really don't know what it is.
Right.
Well, we normally see the contacts in periods of low light, usually at dark, It could be anything. Well, I got fascinated by the ones where you had Sasquatch contact or you had poltergeist activity. The wonder, is it isolated or is there a pattern to it? I started researching and I found dozens of cases where there were peculiar activities after the contact. No issues before, but after poltergeist, what we would call a haunting. And keep in mind that what's a haunting? An entity that's trying to interact with you that you may or may not be able to see. And what's Clarke's third law? Any science sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. And I think we're in the position of dealing with entities and technology that's so far advanced that the only concept we have for it is it's magic. It's supernatural.
So it's possible that when these ships come, they have some kind of physical reaction or something causing an interdimensional portal open or something or other, which would
interdimensional rift.
Rift. There you go.
There was one case that was made into a book and a movie. I think it was called The Entity. Originally, it was looked at as a haunting. There was a woman who was basically, she became the plaything of something nobody to this day has been able to understand. But it would actually attack her to the point that the best description would be rape. And no matter how they tried to shield her from it, they couldn't. And the last I heard, there was research still going on, but nobody had a clue what it might be, where it came from. All they could see was the end result of its activities.
Excuse me.
Something that powerful, that advanced in its technology. The only thing you can call it is magic.
And so when
because it doesn't match the what we understand as technology.
There was a question in the chat room, and I kind of pre-answered it. I wanted to maybe make sure I hit it right. The question was, so the UFOs are being flown by Sasquatch, and I said, no, I think what you mean is that there's an interdimensional rift that opens up because of the UFOs, propulsion or what have you, that other things kind of sneak in while it's open.
Certainly that is one very distinct possibility, yes.
Okay.
I'm saying at locations during the landing, immediately after the landing, entities that look very much like the description we have of Sasquatch appears.
It kind of reminds me of a movie with Stephen King, I think it was. I saw the movie, I didn't read the book, Mist, where the Navy or the military was doing some kind of experiment, and they opened up a rift, and all these weird creatures came through for a certain time. I
saw the movie and couldn't find the book. Something very similar.
Yeah.
Also keep in mind, if in fact, according to Charles Berlitz, the Philadelphia experiment took place as he described, that's what they did, is open an interdimensional rift.
So it's possible that prior to a certain point, you didn't have contact. Perhaps they didn't know we were here, or they didn't know how to get here, or therefore, couldn't. But when we started screwing around with some technology, we may have opened up a portal or a beacon or something that got their attention. That's
certainly a possibility.
Mm.
But also keep in mind that we have, as I said, there are cave drawings, thousands of years old, that show what appear to be UFOs and entities getting off those UFOs and interacting with the locals.
Yeah, well, it's all, using that scenario, they saw these people who were very primitive, and they went, this is, there's nothing really exciting here, we'll go away, and then at some point the technology may have signaled that there's something going on here to have either them or other ones come back. Maybe there's benign ones who are watching and they're fine, and then there's malignant ones or at least selfish ones or something that got our information, radio waves, I don't know, what have you, and nuclear bombs going off. Sounds like they might do some interdimensional rifts and catch some attentions, so and then here they are.
Right before he died a number of years ago, he was older, and we got to talking about it. And, of course, he was the dean of ghost investigation. And we got to discussing the possibility that some hauntings are, in fact, entities who came through rifts opened up by nuclear weapons. We don't know. We see the physical results of setting off a nuclear weapon, but we don't know what the unseen results of that weapon might be.
All right.
Could, in fact, we have opened rifts and things come through?
Many years ago, I started writing a screenplay, being into old science fiction movies. That's exactly what happened. That it opened up some kind of dimensional rift, and then the beings on the other side were divided. One wanted to go in and stop us, and one didn't. And the ones who wanted to go and stop us, of course, started to do it. And they were actually another dimension included in their makeup. So we're three-dimensional, not including time. They were four-dimensional, and so they could just lean into a three-dimensional, pop in and out, because they would just kind of, lean a certain way and appear in a three-dimensional area. And I never finished it. Like a lot of projects I've started, I never finished it, but...
Well, now I'm pulling things that I wrote years ago out and finishing them up. In fact, this month, my 55th book will come out.
55th? It is one per year for me. I am 55, so one per year. I have yet to do one. I don't know if I'm ADD or what, but I'm so when I go to write the stuff down, it's very difficult. It's for me to when I write a serious little paper, it takes me a heck of a long time. I rewrite it a million times. I readjust it. I add more, take it out, and I'm beat by the time. I can't even imagine writing a book.
Well, my first one came out in '89. I was doing my radio talk show, and folks kept calling in, wanting to know where to buy my book. And I said, I don't have a book. I'm a talk show host. I don't write books. Well, if you go write one, we'll buy it. Well, that got my attention. So I wrote it, and they bought it. Been doing it ever since.
Oh, there you go. Maybe this would be my incentive, because I have a bunch of, philosophical, we'll call them, outlooks on things, and I talk about them on the air and so on, but maybe this is a time for me to actually sit down and try to put them on paper. I've been told
it can be a lot of fun. I retired in '02, and I planned on watching TV. And my wife had different ideas. And she said, "You wrote a book. You wrote some books. Go write some more. Just leave the house." And this month, number 55 comes out.
Oh, there you go. What? So on these various books, are they all on this kind of alternative view of things?
I wrote the Manhattan Conspiracy series, which was it started out being one book about a terrorist attack on New York City. I wrote it in '92. I had a truck with a bomb go in the basement of the World Trade Center. I had planes hitting the towers. The FBI showed up at my door because I gave the manuscript to a friend to read, and she was an agent. And she had it when they drove the truck in the basement of the World Trade Center with the bomb. And she said I described the truck, I described the bomb, and I had a fairly good description of the people, so they thought I knew them. I've done a book on border security, which I just got a visit the other day from Homeland Security because I wrote about the tunnels that run underneath the river. There's 900 miles of tunnels underneath El Paso. And I've written a bunch of books on unsolved mysteries, lost treasures, and ghosts, and a bunch of books on UFOs, and even written some textbooks on the law.
That must be a fun feeling to have the Homeland Security or the FBI show up at your door. It's always sounds like a fun operation.
Oh, yeah. Met them at a restaurant, and they didn't even offer to buy my lunch.
Well, they have budgets. They have to, budget constraints.
There is that.
Well, yeah, if you do predict something like that, and it's public, you can probably expect to have a visit because, they got to cover themselves, too.
That's true. And what upset them was that a lot of what I have written in that genre has actually come to pass.
But as you
said at the beginning of the show, that's what I used to do, was teach how to do all that.
But what is your take on the 9/11 aspects of it? I've had many guests, read many a book, and I'm wondering what you would think about that inside job, cooperation. Totally using.
I think there was some cooperation. I think there was some unilateral action that just happened to go along in that same vein. Now, could a bunch of folks leave a cave in Afghanistan and take down the World Trade Center? No.
It is a bit of a stretch.
Could they come and join up with a group of people already in place? Certainly a distinct possibility. Did the U.S. government do it? Not as such, no. But there's always been a rogue element. I'm sure you've heard about Operation Northwood, which was a plan by the Joint Chiefs in the 60s to attack our own cities, shoot down our own planes, kill our own soldiers, and blame whoever the enemy of the month was. They wanted to do it to get public opinion behind them attacking Cuba. Kennedy said no. I think what we're looking at is some semblance of Operation Northwood, because what happened after that? We got to go into Iraq. What does Iraq have? Oil. Got to go into Afghanistan. What does Afghanistan have? Have a lot of sand and a lot of opium. And but it made a lot of companies extremely wealthy.
And that's kind of that's why we, tying back into the gods, ancient gods, and so forth. That's why I have a hard time accepting that there are still these gods or whatever running things, because it seems to be like it's a simple case of individual greed, and it's a corporate approach to get it.
But keep in mind that it's not something anybody could pull off. By that I mean, if I've got a company and I see a chance for a war with Iraq, and we're going to manufacture a widget and make billions of dollars, I don't have very much chance of putting that together. However, if I'm one of those or have access to one of those in the shadows. Now, when you talk about a god, I'm not talking about an ethereal force that sits up in the heavens and watches. The gods of ancient time were, if you look at the descriptions, were actual entities who lived among the people. Every city in the Middle East had its own god. Something happened. Now, if you look at a lot of the ancient legends and you look at the ground in the Sinai, it looks like a nuclear war took place. Well, they pull back the gods, if you will, and rule through their children, demigods. I can't remember the name of the very first one. I've written so many books, they all run together after a while.
I would imagine.
But the very first ruler, how did he get people to follow it? the gods told him to follow him. If you look at the legends, if you look at all the ancient teachings, they followed him because he was the son of Hercules, the son of Zeus. Well, there's a lot of evidence that, in fact, the entity we know as Hercules did, in fact, live. Now, I don't believe they were immortal, but extremely long-lived compared to us.
Mm-hmm.
And when they died, their children stepped into their shoes. I mean, that's perfectly natural. If your father is the owner of a company and he dies, you step into his shoes. If it was the Brown Construction Company and he's Mr. Brown and you're his son and your name is Brown, well, Mr. Brown still owns the company.
Apparently, genetically, the long-livedness, the long-lived, wore off because, unless there's agreement that one disappears after a certain point and turns it over to her child.
No, there would have to be. I read a study years ago that the human body, if we could stop the aging process, the human body could last almost 900 years before it just frankly wore out. But if you have transplants and you keep replacing the parts that wear out, if the aging process is not a factor, in theory, you could go on indefinitely.
Well, that's what seems to be the techno theory now, is to somehow download one's consciousness into a machine, which sounds to me absolutely incredibly short-sighted, that to assume that one's consciousness is merely collection of information sounds to be insane at best, and I would not be one to step up for that that transfer, that's for sure. Because what might come out? What might come out at best?
It would get corrupted.
Yeah, what would come out at best would be a mimicking copy to some analytical degree of the person, which would already be a lesser. But then there would be no consciousness. There, it would be, to me, it's and they believe it, and they're excited about it. I heard some of the people who wrote, they say that if I can live until another 20, 30 years, I'll live forever. And it's like, to me that's just a question of delusion. It's a delusion. We all have delusions. Some have delusions that the Bears will win the Super Bowl, the Chicago Bears, and some have delusions that they're going to make a machine and live forever. The problem I have...
Interestingly enough, even if they copy what makes you into a machine, anytime you make a copy, even with a computer, if you make a copy of a file, there is some data loss. It may be minimal, but over time, you could wind up losing major parts of it. And if you're talking about living forever, how long is forever?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's where the whole thing comes, is that when people think about this stuff, it's because they either A, see this as all there is, or B, like the control they have in this, and don't like the uncontrol of having a hierarchy that are beyond here and now. Especially if I'm one of the top controllers of the world, and I'm ego-based, power-based, and fear-based, and all this stuff. The last thing I want to do is take a chance, roll the dice, and die and move on to a possible another life. And how do I know I would be in charge?
Exactly.
It's all pretty. It's comical and it's sad, but the problem I have is these people are allowed their delusions, and if they want to make machines and live forever, that's fine. However, these people are also ruling the world and are causing us terrible amounts of grief. That's
right, and whenever you have periods of unrest, there are certain people who always profit.
Yeah, I think it's by design that this stuff happens.
Exactly. When I wrote a book called The Northwood Conspiracy, And I discovered in the research that literally every war this country's fought
So hold on.
hasn't started.
Why don't we come back with that? Because we're going to have to take a break here.
Okay.
And we'll come back and continue talking. We'll start right there. And our guest is Ken Hudnall. I am your guest host, James Arthur Jancik, from Feet to the Fire, sitting in for Dr. Rita, and we'll be back to continue after the message. Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.